Hi, I'm Leanne from Bat Lady Herbals, and welcome to my video. Today we're in Central Florida, and I wanted to show you a couple of our native holly bushes and trees that we have around here. Now, we have about 10 or 11 species of holly in the state. They're all in the genus Ilex, and well, most of them actually are tall enough to be considered trees, and only one of them is considered only a shrub. Now, behind me, I actually have two of our most infamous species. I have the Yaupon holly, which is Ilex vomitoria, and I have the Dahoon holly, which is Ilex cassine. Now, both of these hollies have traditional uses in Native American cultures. Both of them were used pretty much interchangeably, although the Yaupon is the one that was preferred. But how they were used, you took the leaves and you prepared them into an extremely strong tea that acted as a ritual purging. And if you paid attention to the scientific name of this one, vomitoria, it kind of says what kind of purging it induced. And they would purge themselves with this tea prior to specific ceremonies. Now, of course, it also had a lot of other things involved in it. It wasn't just the tea, but they also did a milder concoction with the leaves from either one of these to drink kind of like we would drink coffee these days. Just a good drink called black drink, or the black drink. Now, this plant, vomitoria, the Yaupon, has the highest amount of caffeine in it of any plant in North America. And while there are compounds in it that would have a negative effect, there are ways to prepare it to where you bring out the caffeine in it and you lessen those purgative properties. This one, the Dahoon, has a lot of the same properties, doesn't have as much caffeine, and it also is more likely to cause some purging issues. Now, they both contain another compound, another alkaloid that's related to caffeine called theobromine. Now, theobromine, if you look at it under a microscope, is very, very, very similar to caffeine. So much so that it was mistaken for caffeine for quite a long time. But it's actually the compound that's found in chocolate or cocoa that makes you feel a little happy. It also has a lot of the same effects as caffeine, so it's also a stimulant, and it does give you a little bit more get up and go. But because it's a little bit more mild than caffeine, and it has those properties of making you a little bit happy, it lasts longer than caffeine does. So in some ways, the stimulating effects of theobromine are better for you than those of caffeine. And those properties are what make Dahoon holly a really, really good medicinal plant, because both of those alkaloids affect the cardiovascular system, but theobromine has a protective effect on your cardiovascular system. It will help to lower your blood pressure, and it'll just help tonify your entire cardiovascular system. Now, both of these hollies, the leaves are anti-inflammatory, and they have been used to help soothe coughs and reduce fevers. So one of their traditional uses is against malaria. Both of these hollies are filled with anti-inflammatory properties, which, as I mentioned, do help to reduce fevers, but they're also really good for joint pain. Now, some research has been done recently by several universities that have determined that especially the Yaupon holly, but hollies in general, can protect against cancer and possibly even treat certain types of cancer. Texas A&M has recently determined that Yaupon holly is protective specifically against colon cancer. And Stetson University here in Florida has found that in some cases, Yaupon holly will attack leukemia cells while leaving regular healthy cells perfectly alone. So it could help to treat leukemia. So these two trees are often confused for one another. I'm not exactly sure how that happens when they are so completely different. For one, if you can't tell, the leaves are two very different sizes. The Yaupon holly leaves are serrated around the entire leaf margin. Whereas with the Dahoon holly, you can see with the Dahoon holly that some leaves are almost not serrated at all, whereas other leaves have a few more serrations to them. Of course, the Yaupon holly, the leaves are a little bit more on the gray, powdery almost looking side, not quite as bright and shiny. Whereas the Dahoon, they're nice and shiny and they're bright green. There's some examples of Dahoon holly where I have seen darker green, but none of them have ever had this gray cast to them that I see on the Yaupon. However, when you look at the berries, this is where the confusion might set in, because the berries are practically identical. And from a botanical standpoint, the berries of these plants are really interesting because they're not actually berries. They're what's called a drupe, which you might be familiar with from fruits that you get in the grocery store, such as plums or peaches. Drupes are fruit that usually have a huge pit inside of them. Where these get confused with berries and got the common name of having a berry is because they actually have multiple pits inside of them. They have multiple seeds. Now, as you can see, these are bright red fruits, but they also come in either yellow or orange on certain species, certain varieties. Now, there is another plant that is a look-alike for holly here. It's an invasive called the Brazilian pepper tree. One of the main ways that you can tell it apart from especially the Dahoon holly is that the leaves are pinnately compound, which means that coming out from where the leaf is here, you'd actually have another thing that looks like a branch and you'd have multiple leaves on it. And that one usually is about 5 leaflets to 1 leaf. But it also has reddish berries, and some of those berries also are kind of a greenish. Now, in order to prepare a tea from these leaves safely without inducing vomiting and some of the other side effects, it's actually really good to roast them. People recommend that you take a fresh leaf, not a dried leaf. You put it in the oven at 300 degrees for about 10-15 minutes, just until the leaves start to get a little bit crispy on the edges. And then you take the roasted leaf and use it to prepare tea. You can either simmer it, which will be a little bit stronger, so I don't recommend it for the Dahoon, but with the Yaupon you might get a little bit more caffeine kick in that. Or you could steep it like we do with a regular tea. Now, roasting not only minimizes the chemicals that cause the purging effects, but it also brings out the caffeine, which is why your coffee beans are roasted quite often. So once again, thank you for joining me. My name's Leanne from Bat Lady Herbals. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified whenever I post anything new, make sure you hit the notification bell. If you like what I'm doing here and would like to support, find me on Patreon. All the links for that will be down below. If you want to read more about these wonderful plants, make sure you check out my blog at batladyherbals.com. And I have a shop on Teespring, so feel free to browse that and see if there's anything you'd like. All the links for that will be down below. And once again, thank you. Have a great day.